I'd like to introduce you to Fabiana Lacerca-Allen. She is a recognized expert in corporate compliance, risk management, and leadership with over 30 years of experience advising Fortune 100 companies in the pharmaceutical, biotech, and healthcare industries. Throughout her career, she has been instrumental in designing and implementing global compliance programs, negotiating high-stakes corporate integrity agreements, and fostering ethical business cultures. She has held executive leadership roles in some of the most prominent healthcare organizations in the world. Fabiana's thought leadership extends beyond corporate boardrooms. She is a highly sought-after speaker at industry conferences, addressing topics such as crisis management, internal investigations, and building resilient compliance programs. Her insights have earned her widespread recognition. In addition to her leadership in compliance, Fabiana is a published author. Her latest book, Crisis Capable: Building Your Capacity to Survive and Succeed in Every Environment, provides a blueprint for navigating uncertainty with resilience and strategic foresight. Welcome, Fabiana.
Thank you, Darshan. That was a very nice introduction. It's so good to finally connect.
I know it's taken a while. We've had a few earthquake things and all kinds of stuff, but let's
Talking
start.
about crises, yes.
But we persevered. So let's start about learning about you. You've had over 30 years of experience leading high stakes negotiations with Fortune 100 companies. I'm curious, what initial aha moments drew you to this field, and how has it evolved over time in terms of these aha moments that have shaped your life?
My first aha moment, Darshan, is when I was 6 years old that I can remember. This is the first time I understood risk, and I understood that I had a role in minimizing that risk. So after the first attempted kidnapping, I was, growing up in Argentina during a dictatorship, a lot of things happening. I went to my father and I said, I don't want to die and I don't want you to die, thinking that he would say, oh, Fabiana, don't worry, nobody's going to die. He instead looked at me seriously and he said, well, Fabiana, we're all going to die, so don't worry about that. Worry instead about what you're going to live for. And there's certain things worth dying. For everything else, you need a plan. So I joke that that was my first aha moment. That was the moment I realized, wait, I have a role in all of these. I can take care of myself, and it's up to me to minimize risk. So that's what sent me off in the path I am today. I think right after that, I was in school, and the teachers ask, what do you want to do when you're an adult? I had a friend that said, I want to be a tree so I don't have to talk to people. That's very telling. I instead said, I want to be a queen. And she looked at me and says, well, why? Which to me was obvious why. But instead I said, well, I'll put the bad people in jail, the good people out. I had some social justice idea in my head. And she said, well, you cannot be a queen, which was a mistake on her part, because we ended up having Maxima, Queen of the Netherlands, from Argentina. But she instead said, you have to choose something else. So I said, a lawyer, for the same reasons. So now my team gave me a T-shirt that says, compliance only second to being the queen. But that's what my aha moment was. I lived in a very difficult time in Argentina. Perón, Evita, don't cry for me, Argentina. We were a dictatorship for many years, leading to the first democratic government of President Alfonsín. And my father was the first state secretary of industry of Argentina in Alfonsín's presidency. So all those years leading to that, it was a very difficult time with respect to safety and what was happening.
So you said the first time, were you kidnapped another time, or how actually have you been kidnapped, or how many times were there?
I have never been kidnapped. That's where I am. Here I am. But we suffer a lot of security incidents. You're going to have to read my book for it, Darshan. But that's all those years in Argentina, my early years, were those of turmoil and a lot of upheaval and a lot of confusion. Well, a dictatorship does that to people, about what to say, who to trust, what your processes were, what would you do if. So I had an upbringing different from many people, but it gave me some tools that were very, very useful later on in corporate America. I'm highly confident, I'm highly intuitive, I have a strong emotional intelligence because growing up not knowing what happens next gives you those skills.
I suspect there's one more talent you didn't mention, that you're probably very situationally aware all the time.
There's a whole chapter in my book about situational awareness, and not only I know what's happening around me, I can quickly assess a situation. So no surprises.
So I think that's probably what has made you quite successful, is you're very observant, right?
Very observant. I know what's happening around me. I sense things. I am uncomfortable or I'm comfortable. I like it or not like it. Obviously, I don't react always immediately, but this is all information that I gather anywhere I go.
So I'm curious, what's your definition of a crisis? I suspect it might be quite different than most people.
Like a boss asked me once, Fabiana, I love, working through crises with you because you always remain so calm. And I looked at him and I said, well, they're not shooting at me. I'm having a good day. So crises are different at each stage of your life, different times in your life. Crises are any time that events happen rapidly around you and they require you react to it. So it can be from a kid not doing his homework or her homework, or to having to recall a product from a pharmaceutical industry. So it's the range. All crises are not the same, but the elements are always the same.
I've learned that humans learn through experience, and clearly, obviously, you've gone through quite a few crises and challenges, personally, life-threatening, and so on, that have, changed your experience, and you've learned from them. And I'm curious, can you actually train someone to have your level of understanding, or you just have to experience it?
Everybody asks that question, Darshan, and I'll tell you what my answer is. You can absolutely train for it. I trained my kids from a very young age to be very observant. So I would take them, for example, to the mall. I'd say, look at that guy. Now turn around and describe him. And that's a trained attribute. Um, or I would say, how many times have they seen this car? Because there's no coincidences. If you see somebody too often, you're being followed. And you start having those conversations as something normal because we all have the intuition and the instinct. Long time ago, one of my projects as a lawyer was talking to women that were raped. And 90% of them would say, something was off. I was uncomfortable, but I didn't want to say anything because he was a friend of a friend, or he was good looking, or he had helped me with this. We all have the intuition, but our society had trained us to be nice and respectful, and you don't want to offend people. I train my kids differently. If you're uncomfortable in that elevator, get off the elevator. If you don't want to kiss your uncle, don't kiss your uncle. You know, validate their feelings because we all have them.
I think that's interesting. What you're saying there is because a lot of people have what we call a gut feeling or a sixth sense, right? But how do you hone it? And I think that's what you're talking about, is actually the more observant you are and keep challenging yourself to be observant and testing yourself, you actually, sounds like you can improve your sixth sense.
Absolutely. You can start listening. And, there's several people studying these, the Army, the Navy. There's, how can you explain two people similarly trained, same gear, same equipment, same training? They're in Afghanistan. One gets into a situation, the other one would say, the silence was too eerie. The cat looked weird. all of that is that one of them was listening to their intuition. And so they're trying to train to that. We're trying to identify it. There was a time where intuition was a scary word. I'm like, what do you mean you rely on your intuition?
Well, especially in business, right? All right, especially in business because most people want to rely on facts and numbers and so on and so forth. You need both, right?
You need both. But most of the time when a decision needs to be made, you don't have all the data. So you have to be comfortable making decisions with the information you have, knowing that it's not perfect, that you can always change where you're going. That requires humility, that requires the ability to think fast and change opinions. But people would follow a leader that makes decision rather than one that waits for every single fact, because sometimes that's too late. When your life depends on it, Darshan, you're not going to sit there and start calculating. I guarantee it.
It's not going to be a PowerPoint presentation.
No, in my PowerPoint presentation, there's things like if you think you're that good looking, think twice. Nobody falls in love with you instantly. Because people get in situations, especially men, outside of the US, traveling because they think they're irresistible. They're being followed. They send the good looking woman. Of course, they're not going to send the ugly one. That's obvious. And that's how crime happens every day. We see it so often.
I wanted to talk about insights because I think what you're having is without these observations and stuff, you have a keen sense of insights and then translating and stuff. So I'm curious. First of all, how would you define insights?
Well, it's the knowledge that something's off. I don't know if you ever fell from a horse or crash in a car. Your brain knows what's happening, but everything goes slow because there's a rush of adrenaline in your body and you have an inability to react fast. If you're alert, you're already understanding what's happening around you. Your level of adrenaline is higher, and so you're able to think and act. So, listening to what's happening around you is important. One of the telltale signs for me is I get like on the top of my stomach a pain. It's physical. I know something's off. But because I've been relying on my instinct and creating my own insights since I can remember, since 6 years old, maybe before, and you're going to read this in the book, Darshan, because there's a chapter in the very beginning where I'm 6 years old, my sister's 4.5 or 5. We are having dinner at our weekend house. We are sitting in front of big windows. And my sister says, we're being watched. 4.5 or 5. And my father dismissed it and said, oh, don't worry, those are the guards. We're all good. Then I dream that we're under attack, that the red shadows are coming. And I go wake them up. And they send me back. So the question that I always have is, how do you recognize it? We all have them. And once you do, that's when you truly harness its power because now it's serving you.
Interesting. So I'm curious, how have you translated these personal experience and honing your gut and everything to aha moments you've had professionally now?
you know, because I trust what I feel. I trust the instinct. I trust the insight. So if I meet somebody, let's say I'm doing an investigation, Darshan, I can tell you if they're lying to me or not. Something's off. Something doesn't add up. I file it. I have an extremely good memory and observational skills. So I'll give you a real example. Long time ago, without saying the company, there was this allegation this woman made against this man of attempted rape. Couples months later, I see them dancing together. And the way they were dancing together, I remember, I file it. I'm like, these people are too close to each other. They're too comfortable. And then comes the allegation. So we start the investigation. And then I remember that after when she says the attempted rape happened, I saw them dancing. And I ask her, And I said, you were dancing too happily with somebody that supposedly, allegedly tried to rape you. I would not be dancing with him. Then the real story comes out. They were having an affair. He told her he was going to stay with his wife. She decided to raise the allegation. So my point is, I'm observant. I had filed that. I have seen it. I trust what I see and what I feel.
So, what tips would you give someone to become one, more observationally aware, and two, to actually improve their sixth sense skills?
We all have it. Just listen to it. Hone them. Practice. Go into a restaurant. Take a few seconds look and then sit at your table and try to memorize. How many tables? How many people? How far is it to the door? Where are my exits? Did anybody look out of place? Did anybody look like they don't belong here or like they're not? And you start finding that information. And the more you do it, the more it comes naturally. I took my team, again, long time ago, to a restaurant, and I had hired somebody to steal a purse. To come, we were in a separate room, and I had given them the lecture, if you're that good looking, nobody's that good looking, think twice. If you see somebody twice, you're being followed. So all of that. Now the education continues, and somebody comes in to take a purse. Only one person in 30 realizes what was happening. She jumps over the table, runs after the guy. Everybody else could not say if it was a female, a male, was it the waitress, It's interesting because people let their guard down all the time. You see these people walking on their phones. They don't even know where they're going. You see these people, which always amazed me. They go running in a city they've never been. Like, you don't want to exercise that bad. I guarantee it. If you feel like you want to exercise, jump up and down in your hotel room. People take risks all the time and they don't even know it.
Part of it, I think people, for the most part, their lives are normal, right? And so when something like abnormal happens or out of the ordinary, I think people question themselves first. Like, is it me? Did I see that? Not see that? And obviously, you learn not to do that.
There is no normal. We cannot even define normal. We live in a violent world with different political pressures, with different economic pressures, with different experiences. And so you never know. I mean, my kids were born and grew up here, and I cannot tell you how many times I had to worry about shooter in their schools. And we live in a great neighborhood, and that's the reality.
So I'm curious. I think part of it is also the mindset and the psychology. So how do you prepare someone to be more better adapt to deal with crisis?
You embrace them. Crises are not bad. They hone your skills. Life is not perfect by no means. When you think it's perfect, you get surprised. So you look for opportunities to make a difference. And in that, you embrace the learnings. I have these conversations with my kids. Trust me, and they're like, oh no, mom comes again with a sermon. But, what do you put out in social media? Where you go? I've never been drunk in my entire life. This is, something that my kids go about. It's so uncool. You don't even say that. And I'm like, I always had to be aware of my surroundings, and it's not a bad thing. I drink with people I feel totally safe, where I know where I'm going. When I'm working, 2 sips, 1, 2, thank you, oh, that was great. And then cranberry juice and orange juice. You need to understand your surroundings. You need to understand your capabilities. You need to understand that you are not in Disneyland.
So I'm just curious, do you see crisis as crisis or do you just see this as a new challenge?
I see it as an opportunity to get better, make a difference. It's life. Until you feel a crisis, you don't know what good is. It's the way that the life teaches you, enjoy this peace, enjoy this beauty, enjoy these blessings, because it's not forever.
I know the answer, I think, but I'm going to ask you anyways. So when you have this observational and you're always, attuned to a crisis happening, do you think that a lot that prevents you from enjoying life thoroughly, or not at all?
I'll enjoy it more than anybody else, Darshan, because
Why?
I
Tell me
know,
why.
first of all, because I'm Aries, so I'm fire, I'm passion, I know what's good, and I know that it can go away in a second. And so our mission here is to help others make a difference and enjoy life because you never know.
So, how have you translated these things you've learned through a lot of experience and so on into leadership skills that you now use as well as train others with?
For that, you would have to talk to my team or people that had worked with me a long time. But I think that being authentic is important. With me, you get what you see. This is it. I'm it. I'm honest. I'm transparent. I make mistakes and I'm willing to make mistakes and I'm willing to recognize it. I never take credit for other people's wins. I always take responsibility for anything that happened or doesn't happen within my team. And I think that I've learned that as important as giving orders is following orders, which is not an easy thing to do. I don't know everything, but I'm willing to take a chance. And that's also important. And I surround myself with people like me.
And you talk a lot about sales negotiations. So, I'm curious, how is all of these things we talked about also translated to sales negotiations and, how you deal with mind shifts for salespeople?
Well, as a lawyer, I think naturally you're in sales. You're selling a service, you're selling yourself, you're selling your story. But I say, understand your surroundings, understand people. We all want to win. We all need to understand that, generally speaking, if the outcome is the same, we both want to succeed in something, we all have different ways towards it. And my way is not the only way. Listening to others, learning from others has been important for me as well, part of my journey.
What three mistakes do you think a lot of salespeople make? And once you've highlighted that, it really changes the way they perform.
Win at all costs. That's not respectable or admirable. Not being transparent. I hate it when you're not factual. Because generally speaking, I'm good at what I do because I do my homework. I would never show up not knowing. So when you're not being factual and when you're not telling me the truth, I lose respect. And the third is being too pushy. I don't like that mentality of wait, 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 don't go yet. Because sometimes you do have to part ways, and that's okay.
So you talk about preparation and research and stuff. I mean, how extensive do you prepare for some of these situations and negotiations?
Extremely. It's interesting because not long ago I was interviewing a person for a position, um, and they had not even researched me. And I'm thinking that's a very poor start. If I'm going to interview with somebody, I guaranteed not only I looked at the resume, but I try to make connections. If I know that we know somebody in common, I would call them up. I would be interested. I do Google searches. I understand what school they went to, what they like, what they don't like. You have to be prepared. You need to know what makes somebody tick in order to successfully connect. So the fact that people come and have a discussion and they're not even prepared is mind blowing to me. That's it.
So tell me, we've talked about your book, Crisis Capable. Tell me, what inspired you to write it?
I always felt that if somebody in the beginning of my career had given me some of the advice I have in the book, I would have a lot less sleepless nights than I had. So I figured I'm at a time in my life where giving back is really important to me, where as you climb, you bring people up with you. That's true leadership. And I felt it was the right time to do it.
So, having gone through everything you have, and if you were to go back in time and give advice to 6-year-old Fabiana, what would you tell her now based on what you know already at this point?
that you're going to be okay, that you're going to survive and you're going to thrive, because having a plan and knowing that you can take care of yourself is really rewarding. And it gives you a strength, and it gives you um, the type of leadership that not only I admire, but other people admire as well.
I want to go back to this crisis. I think it's kind of important. A lot of times when people are faced with hardship, they're just overwhelmed, right? And so, how do you get someone to stop becoming overwhelmed and actually get on the track to eventually see it as an opportunity that you see to learn and grow?
You need to be prepared. We are all going to face difficulties. Nobody lives this life without hardship, period. That's a given. And the difference is how you're going to go about it, because it's going to happen whether you want it or not. You don't get to choose. The only thing you can influence is how you react to it. So, knowing that, what do you want to be? A victim or in charge of your future? I'm like, let me be in charge. My dad used to tell me bodyguards are great, but nobody's going to love your life more than you. And ultimately, it's up to you to better your chances, to fight for another day, to make a difference. And I think that that's applies to all of us. Life is happening with you or without you.
I think you hit upon a point that's kind of interesting, and that is that at some point you realize that you control nothing, right? The only thing you control is how you think, your mindset, and how you react to things. And even that, you can't control yourself 100% of the time because you have thoughts and emotions as well.
But the more you train your thoughts and emotions, the more that you don't get into peaks, because it doesn't help. Getting all stressed about it, it's not going to make a difference. It's going to not allow you to think clearly. So you might as well say, it's funny, because at 6 years old, you don't have the concepts, of course, as an grown. But I always felt that if I was truly kidnapped, my plan at 6 years old was eat a lot of dulce de leche, which is like caramel. There was a thing that my mom did not allow us to eat a lot growing up because, but my plan was, I'm going to convince my captors to buy me dulce de leche a lot. And I'll eat dulce de leche. And I told my parents in a place, I'll be close by a place that sells a lot of dulce de leche. It was a very basic plan at 6 years old. I realized later that maybe they don't want to buy dulce de leche for me. But at least I felt there was a measure of control, that there was something I could do.
So I'm curious, you talked about your children. How many children do you have?
3.
3. And how old are they now?
27, 24, and 18.
And I'm curious, what fields are they going into? What interests them?
Oldest is a lawyer.
In compliance?
Started in compliance, but now it's in the financial industry.
Okay.
But he thinks very much like me. I mean, they're all influenced by me, Darshan.
Of course, I can tell you train them. Yeah.
Yes, they're.
That's why I'm curious as to what fields they went into.
Yes. The second one just finished college, and she's going to be an educator. And the third one is too young to know.
Okay. Well, that's all right. Let them explore, right?
Exactly.
So, have you, obviously, you haven't had any more kidnapping attempts lately, have you?
No, I'm too old now. Nobody wants me anymore. But the training is there. I would not mess with me anyways.
So tell me, what areas are you want to look into in the future, and maybe for your future aha moments? What interests you, and what are you going to be pursuing in the future?
Want to continue making a difference. So I want to mentor young professionals, women, minorities. I want to be on board. I want to continue being on boards, making a difference. I want to teach. I want to write another book. So there's a lot of opportunity to continue sharing my experience and hoping that it makes a difference in somebody else's life.
So what's the next book going to be on? What are you thinking now?
I was thinking about that last night as I was falling asleep. And I'm still refining that idea. But it's about what are the situations that you can predict and that you can prepare for. And how do you go about it?
Tell me the difference. What do you mean?
Most people think that crises are unexpected. But I had a professor in law school that used to say, for example, there's no violent crimes. There's signs all along. You just ignore them. And I was thinking, is it the same in a crisis? COVID, for example. People would say that we had signs that we were going to have a big pandemic like that at one point. People ignore it. Earthquakes in San Francisco. The big one is coming. How many people are prepared for it? How many times do you see signs that you ignore?
I think part of that is because there's big gaps. Like, let's take earthquakes, for example. You have one, you've experienced it, it changes the way you think and feel, but then there's a big gap, right? So then you kind of lose that.
Well, you lose the sense of urgency. This is life. You lose the sense of focus, but there's earthquakes here all the time. I mean, I would say that we experience one somewhat every month.
Do you think that's happening now? I mean, some people would argue that we're really in a crisis around the world right now. And tell me why so. I'm just curious from your perspective. Why are we in a crisis?
Because our governments in general are more extremist than ever, because there's war, because there's famine, because there's inequality, because there's an unhappiness, because we have too many people in this world that cannot eat.
And do you think people are ignoring this, like as we talked about a few minutes ago? And then,
yeah, I think not everybody is focusing on it. The mentality is being, as long as I'm okay, I'm good, which is the wrong mentality.
Where do you think this is headed? I'm just curious. What's your gut tell you?
My gut tells me is that it's going to get worse before it gets better, because that's the cycle, that's life. I think we should start paying attention to the small details. Talking about earthquakes, I downloaded an app that predicts earthquakes. So a couple months ago, it wakes me up middle of the night saying 3 seconds to a 6.0 earthquake. So we hide under the table, and I'm messaging my two olders, which were not home, saying, if something happens, we're under this table, da 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 da. And my daughter goes, Mom, can I see your phone? Yes. Look, you didn't put, you have to establish an area. So it was 6.0, but like very far. But what that taught me is, A, you need to know how to use the technology, but 2, hiding under the table is not the solution. But now it gives me an opportunity to rethink my thinking. And so if we ignore these opportunities to make a difference, then you're surprised.
Yeah, it's all about balance, right? And as you said, there's cycles in life, and you live long enough, you realize that when things are really, really bad, chances are it's going to get better. And when things are really, really good, chances are something bad is going to happen.
Exactly.
So be prepared and just ride out the cycle, because there's always going to be a cycle, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, if you could have lunch, dinner, a meal with anyone you could, who would it be, and what would you want to find out from them?
It would be my father. He passed away in 2019. I miss him terribly. And it would just be to share that, Dad, you were right. Everything he said happened. His learnings have been amazing. I would also like to see my mom. I would like to see President Alfonsín. He was an amazing man. There's so many people. I mean, I would have a big party. There would be so many guests. Because you learn from the good, but you also learn from the bad. There were some bad people in my life that I'd like to see again.
Did you get your crisis perspective from your father?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it sounds like a couple of times he was saying, well, don't worry, nobody's looking, it's just the guard. But I don't think you would have said that.
Well, it was his way. We had these conversations many, many times. It was his way of saying, don't worry about the things that you don't have to worry yet. Always have a plan. He had a plan. I was 6 years old. We didn't have a plan, obviously, yet. But That's always been, I remember a funny story. So when I first came here, Darshan, we didn't have the phones recording, answering machine. We didn't have that. So I was so happy when I got my first answering machine. I tried so many times to sound sexy, but not too sexy, and sound nice, but not too nice. So this is Fabiana, leave a message. Okay. So I started getting first hang up calls. And then one night I come back from college and there was a message that said, Fabiana, we're going to get you tonight. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to kidnap me here. So I called my father hysterically crying. And so he wake up and he goes, Fabiana, stop crying. Let me understand what you're saying. So I tell him the story. I play him the message, silence. Fabiana, if they come for you, go with them. You're going to have a great life. And I go, what? Goes, it's a joke. And I'm like, not funny. So he goes, think about it calmly. I'm the target. You're not the target. They're not going to fly to the United States to get you. The last time, so he gave me a whole history lesson. The last time that any foreign force flew into the United States was the Mossad trying to get, it's not going to happen. They don't want you. So it has to be another explanation. So go to bed. Let's talk tomorrow. And it was a prank call. 80-year-olds that thought that my voice was sexy, but you learn to put things in perspective.
So I'm curious, how have you learned to balance from not overreacting to something like this? And that's an ongoing challenge, huh?
Life gives you the tune-ups you need.
Well, listen, it's been great talking to you, Fabiana. Appreciate it. And I love hearing all your stories, and your book sounds like a great read. I'm definitely going to be getting it and reading it. And I appreciate you sharing your stories with us and, giving us a different perspective on crisis and how to manage it.
It's been my pleasure, Darshan. I enjoy talking to you. And we've been challenged by a few crises ourselves. And so I'm happy we were able to catch up and talk.
And finally had this session. Again, thank you very much.
Getting to AHA was brought to you by iResearch. To find out more about us, head to iResearch.com and make sure to search for Getting to AHA in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening.